Timer on, and we're going to get started. 35-minute program, and we start now. Ready when you are, Latif. Hey, what's up, everybody? You tuned in to another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Kenn Dowell. This is a place where we bring art, culture, politics, and business all together, and we do it every Sunday right here on this channel. But when I'm not shooting this podcast, I am the owner of Strategic Resources, where we specialize in political campaigns, government, and public relations. Been doing it for over 20 years all around the state of Ohio, and met some amazing people along the way. And this program gives me an opportunity to give you a chance to meet some of those people. We share some of our experiences, and maybe we can help you be a better person or a better business. So today I got on my program a few people, because today we call it this edition. We're going to start a new thing here on our program where we're bringing in Pastor Aaron Phillips from the Clergy Coalition, and he's going to give us some updates about things that's going on in the clergy community around Cleveland, and he's going to bring some guests in from time to time, and he brought someone in today. Latif, how you doing back there?
I am doing good.
All right, brother, you sound down. You okay?
I see you got a full conference today, huh?
Oh, yeah, it's a full conference today, man. We're going to get it in.
Full round table today,
We're going to get it in today. We're
So
going
it's about to go down.
Yeah, we're going to try to throw down. Hey, we're going to get Aaron, Pastor Phillips. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, my brother. How are you, sir?
Oh, we're doing great. We're doing great,
All
man.
right. Always glad to be here. I know they air on Sunday, so I hope everybody went to church this morning and then are watching the podcast this evening.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to give you a moment here. The camera's going to get on you, Phillips, and talk to us a little bit about the Clergy Coalition. I'm going to stand out the way a little bit. Go ahead.
All right. My name is Pastor Aaron Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of the Cleveland Clergy Coalition. My name is Pastor Aaron Phillips. I'm the Senior Pastor of Morehouse Baptist Church and the Executive Director of the Cleveland Clergy Coalition. I'm glad to be here with you today. The Cleveland Clergy Coalition is an amalgamation of all of the African American clergy groups in Cuyahoga County, and everyone has their own individual mission and assignment, but we come together as a clergy organization to do great big things together when necessary, such as voting rights, fighting for criminal justice issues and reforms, and making sure that we're providing jobs and bringing economic justice here in our community. So we're always providing jobs for folks. We always have a program right now that's taking people to work every day in our church vans, and we also have a program, this job training program that we're working with, Earn and Learn program here in the city of Cleveland. So the coalition is doing great things together as we continue to work as a body of Christ. One of our terrific, fantastic leaders who has really helped me get started with the Cleveland Clergy Coalition since the inception is with me today. One of my dearest friends, Bishop Tony Minor. He has been involved in social justice issues for most of his life. And when it comes to social justice and comes to things that our civil rights movement, Bishop Tony Minor is our go-to person in the community, not just for clergy, but for our entire community. And I really thank God for him. One of the great things that he does with us, Ken, I was telling you today, is Vessels Votes, and which provides leadership and training and personnel in all of our churches when it comes time to voting. And we don't wait until the voting season, but we're working on that on a regular basis, getting information to people. Voters Vessels was extremely helpful in making sure we did not pass issue 1. He's doing that kind of work on a regular basis for us, and we were just talking about putting together Souls of the Polls. Every time I start something new, the first person I call is Bishop Tony Minor, and we're glad to have you here today, Bishop, and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule, because I know you work you're running Metro Health too, and so we know that, so we thank God for you being here with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. Just want to clarify, I'm not running it. We have a wonderful CEO, Dr. Erica Steed, do work at the hospital in impact and engagement. But I'm just happy to be here as a local pastor, Community Faith Assembly. I also serve as the chairperson of Faith Community United, which is a community organizing entity that works with the church. And one of our signature programs is Vessels Vote. And that's where we train the faith community to be involved in the public arena, to deal with the pain beyond the pews. And voting historically for us is very important. It's holy ground.
Yes.
And so we have to bring about public policy change, make sure we hold elected officials accountable. But most important is to continue to train and build up a new cadre of activists and advocates who are concerned about the health and well-being of the community.
So let's talk a little bit about that, Bishop, before we get further, because as our program goes, we got this thing where we got to get in your business a little bit so that we know who you are, where you came from, and that kind of stuff to help us understand why you do what you do today. You a native Clevelander? You grew up here?
Yeah, I grew up in Cleveland. Grew up in Glenville.
Oh, wait.
He's a tar blood.
What did he do? You grew up where?
I grew up in
He's a tar
Glenville.
blood,
No,
yeah.
well, I ended up going to Collinwood. I played basketball at Collinwood, but I grew up in Glenville. I grew up in the 60s,
Oh.
in the heart of the 60s, heart of the Black Panther movement, the Black Power movement. I was right there in the midst of the Glenville riots, the Huff riots, as a young person, and it certainly transformed my life and impacted
Where
me.
you grew up in Glenville? Where?
I grew up right off 123rd. I grew up on Salem between Lakeview and 123rd. So I tell people when I say it at the church all the time, I said, look, I grew up on Lakeview.
Yeah, that's the
Lakeview.
hood.
Right,
That's
right.
the hood.
Okay. And I also know, so you went to high school, you went to Glenville?
I went to Collinwood.
You went to Collinwood.
Uh-huh.
How you end up going to Collinwood?
Two reasons. One, the real reason is I followed Wendy Williamson. That was my little girlfriend, lived around the corner. And
that's the real
that's the real reason.
Okay,
And
all right,
I
we
talk
can
about that in
understand
my
that.
book. I got a book that's coming out in about a couple months.
Okay.
And so, but also they had a good basketball program too.
Better than
Okay.
Glenville.
Yeah. At that
that time,
moment,
it could've
at that
been. It
moment,
could've been
and
at
we
that
still with all the guys in the neighborhood. But the other part too is that a lot of my brothers and my cousins, there was a gangster side, a street side of the minors, right? And so my parents were very adamant about my not getting caught up in the streets.
Okay.
And you can only hide so long.
Right.
And so I think those three things, Wendy and basketball and kind of wanting to get in a different environment.
I know that was a rough environment because I knew some guys who went to school back then, and they were saying when they went to Collinwood how they used to have to run home.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
and I think let me say this too. I think Collinwood really shaped. Jeff and I were classmates for 4 years. In fact, Jeff Johnson was the first African American person I met at Collinwood.
Really?
First person. First person. And we played basketball for 4 years. But I think being at Collinwood.
Jeff played basketball.
Jeff played basketball. Jeff played basketball, football, and ran track.
Okay, all right.
But Jeff was a star. All of us were stars, but he was a triple star.
Really?
Tell him I said that too. But it's just the truth. But we Collinwood, because of the violence, right? It caused us as African Americans to become closer, right? And I think that it birthed in all of us, and that's why so many people like Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones was a Collinwood graduate. Just so many. We can go down the list. India Pierce, Danny Williams. There's a whole host of people that did very well. It was a very strong from academic standpoint. But I think that by two things: one, growing up in Glenville, the time I grew up, then going to Collinwood, dealing with the issues of race and violence, and they had the Black History program. I took the Black History classes. That whole experience shaped me to be concerned about the issues I'm dealing with now.
Okay.
And then you went to Morehouse, which hell, you're coming out of Morehouse, you had to be ready back then, actually. So what was it like going there?
It was really good. It was. I went there. I didn't go there to be a preacher. Didn't go there to be an activist. I think everyone that goes to Morehouse is attracted to is history. Martin Luther King, the Civil Rights Movement. It's the Mecca of the Civil Rights Movement. But I wanted to be a lawyer. But I met a girl, a Spelman girl. We were in the library, and I said, look, let's hang out. And she said, cool, let's hang out this evening. I'm going to a meeting downtown. Why don't you come? And so I went, and it turned out to be a campaign rally for Andrew Young.
Really?
So I'm there to impress her, and James Orange, who had worked with Dr. King, he was an organizer, older at that time, he asked for a volunteer. He said Andy Young was coming to the school in 2 days. He was coming on campus in 2 days, and they hadn't done any outreach. And he said, I need somebody to take these flyers and go passing around. So I raised my hand, not because I wanted to join the movement, I wanted to get more closer to Debbie Carter. So I took those flyers, I passed them around, went dorm to dorm, passed it around, and the next day the room was filled. And in the midst of the campaign, Andrew Young said, is Tony Minor here? So I said, yeah. They said, come on, I want you to introduce Tony Minor. He's our student coordinator for the campaign.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. That's how that happened. It was all because of volunteering. And
No, it was because of that girl.
Yeah, all because of that girl. But I always talk about all because of that girl. But the idea of that if you do the work, people are going to
That's right.
notice you.
Right.
Because I didn't, at that time, I wasn't really trying to, I didn't realize in the room was Miss King, Julian Bond, all those people in the room.
Wow.
They had brought everybody on campus because they really wanted to make sure that students were involved in the campaign because this was a historic campaign because we had the opportunity to elect a second black mayor, right, to follow Maynard Jackson. So they really was going hard. And so it really opened the door for me to really become more active on campus. When I first got to campus, it was a culture shock, right? Because this is a highly upper class environment, right? Where a lot of the students came from more prominent families.
Right.
People drove nice cars, all that kind of stuff. It was a totally different culture than the one I came out. But I was able to utilize community service and activism that propelled me around campus by doing the work. And that's what I say to people. If you do the work, your gift, as we say in the church, that your gift will make room for you.
Interesting. From there, you got out of college, you graduated, you came back home, or what did you do?
I came. It's really interesting because I graduated. I was going to study for the law school exam. I graduated. I stayed to work on the Jesse Jackson campaign. And so I was part of the Southern Crusade. This was 83. Jesse was running in 84. He had just made the announcement that spring that he was going to run. And I came back to Cleveland in August of 83, came back. I got a little job downtown. I was studying for the LSAT. I was volunteering with NAAC, right? So I was working with Pauline Tarver and Judge Harper, right? I was volunteering with them. And then the Underground Railroad came to town. It was in NAACP, a march to empower voters. And so I volunteered. Joe Madison invited me to get on the march. And so we went all around the country on this march. So when I came back, I said, you know what, I ain't going back to work. I'm going back to school. I said, because I stayed in the dorm at the Graduate School of Theology. So I said, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go to graduate school. I'm going to go to graduate school for theology. While I'm there, I'm going to study for the LSAT, go to Emory, somewhere.
But what made you pick theology, though?
Because I stayed in. See, I grew up in the church, and somewhere along the line, I just knew one day. I always had this feeling that one day I would end up being a preacher, right?
And Morehouse didn't have nothing to do with that.
I think it all did. I think it's all tied together. But what's interesting about my story is that I have an intent, but God had a purpose. And so I ended up that January, I left, went back to Atlanta, enrolled into the School of Theology. And so while I was there, I ran back into, so as we got back, it was King Week. So it was King Week. So every year they have a big march, right? We used to do this every year. And I was the student organizer on campus to get the kids to participate, get the students to participate, et cetera, et cetera. And so I saw James Orange, right?
Okay.
And James said, Tony, you back? Good. I got a job for you. I said, okay. He said, Andy's going to hire you. I'm going to hire you as an intern. So this all happened in January. So I got a job in Andrew Young's office. I was his intern. And a little bit after that, same guy, James Orange. Now, if you understand, James Orange was a young preacher in Selma, Alabama, that was registering people to vote for Dr. King, right? And he was in jail. So the Klan and the white folk put him in jail. And so it got out. I hate to shift the story, but it's important to understand who James Orange is, right? James is about 6'4", really big guy, right? When you got pictures, you'll see him all around Dr. King, right? So he was in jail, and word got out that they were going to lynch James Orange. So they had a march, Vivian and the whole group of people. They had a march. They had a vigil outside of the Marion County Jail. Okay. This is a historic event. James Orange is tied to the Selma March. So what happened was that the police came in the Klan, and at that time they were one and the same, okay? And they shot out the lights. There was the march. They shot out the light. They started beating people.
The police did this.
They started beating people in the march. James is still in jail, right? They started beating people in the march. There was a young guy, Jimmy Lee Jackson. He was there with his grandfather, 80-something-year-old grandfather, and they ran down a side alley, and the police came and shot him. Okay, so and he died.
For context, what year was this?
This was 64, 65.
So just for everybody, I was born in 67.
I was born in 66.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And where was you at in that time? Reverend Minor?
I was 5 years old.
He's 5 years old. You see
I
what
was
I'm
5
saying?
years old.
So when we talk about this context, I know
Yeah.
a lot of people be thinking like, "Oh, that was back in the days,"
But
that
I want you to
wasn't
hear
that
this story.
far
I want
back.
you to hear the rest of it. Bevel said, we're going to take the body, the casket of Jimmy Lee Jackson, and we're going to march all the way to Montgomery. And Dr. King said, no, you can't do that. That's a little too absurd. So they had the first march. The first march was the march that became known as Bloody Sunday. So that was the first march. It didn't have a casket, but they got together. That Dr. King was not there. So it was led by James Bevel, John Lewis, and Amelia Boynton. People don't know about Amelia Boynton. Amelia Boynton was the person that went and talked to Dr. King and encouraged him to come to Selma, right? That she's the woman on the bridge that got beat. So as the story goes on, there was the first march, there was the second march, which Dr. King did come, and they went to the bottom of the bridge, but that he turned around. And then because it was in court, because they were in court to try to block the injunction. They was trying to get the injunction lifted. So they eventually had the third march in which they were able to go on and march. But all of this would not have happened if it would not have come, if it had not been for James Orange. So James Orange was there organizing. He went to jail. That's what led to the Jimmy Lee Jackson getting killed. That opened the door to that. Now this is the same guy that at Andy Young's campaign meeting asked for somebody to pass out flyers. And so I took the flyers and went and passed them. So when I came back, he helped me get the job.
Wow.
Then he came back to me the next year and said, Tony, I got another job for you. I said, okay. He said, what are you doing on Sunday? Where you at? I said, I'm at a little church. A friend of mine got a little church down in Dawson, Georgia. He said, Laurie has an opening. I want you to go and talk to Joe Laurie, that he has an opening for a student pastor. I said, okay.
What church? What was the church?
He was pastoring Central United Methodist Church, was on the campus of the AU Center. It was the biggest and most prominent Methodist church in that area. Lawyers, doctors, etc. This is the church that Laurie pastored, right?
Okay.
And so I go in and talk to him on the first day. He told me, I called his staff, I called the SCLC office, right? And I came in and talked to him. He had me, he was on the phone talking to somebody. He said, I can't talk right now. Why don't you come back, come down to my office tomorrow. I go down to the SCLC office, same office Dr. King had. I sit in the office, he's on the phone. And he said, so in between, I don't know who he was talking to, Walter Font, he was talking to somebody, Fontroy somebody. And so he said, well, where you from? I said, I'm from Ohio. Cleveland. He said, oh, okay, Cleveland's produced, you done good. Hold on for a minute. I said that for a half an hour, back and forth. So he said, I tell you what, join me Sunday. Come by the church Sunday, we'll talk. Came to Sunday, he handed me a robe, and ever since then, I was his guy.
Wow.
All because of Debbie Carter and passing out them darn flyers. Now, I should have been listen to this, my intention was to go to law school, be a corporate lawyer. I should be in California driving a Bentley as a corporate lawyer.
Right. Man, but you had some experience most people never had.
There's a whole stuff.
I know there's so much.
Yeah, that's just opened the door. So that's why I can't turn around. So many people planned and went on to, I was the student campaign manager for Julian Bond when he ran against John, right? And that's what broke my heart to come back to Cleveland when we lost. And John and I were really good friends. When I was a student activist, John did more for us than
John
Bond
Lewis
did. Yeah.
And
then I ended up going with the elites, right? And that's why I tell you, I have never, ever got it right since that campaign. And I don't worry about it. I never get it. Y'all know, that's 20 years. I have never got it right on them campaigns.
Yeah, you be on the other side.
Yeah.
You do. But that's all right. I tell you it's all right. We still with you.
We're still with you.
Let me ask him because I'm going to have to run. But I just want to know your take on the continuation march on Washington and what we did. I was so glad to be with you. When they called me about it in late today, they told me you were the MC. It really made me feel much more comfortable being a part of that with Urban League and March Maccabee on Saturday. Give us your take on that and what we did here in Cleveland and what's happening national, and explain to people, especially watching this podcast, why marching and why we still keep the struggle continues.
Yeah, I just think it's so important within our culture, and that's where we are, our culture, that we keep these historic moments alive, right? And those historic moments become fuel for the future. So we don't reenact, so we can stay stuck, right, in the past. But it tells us our history, right? And we know what was the investment, and then hopefully what it should have done, no matter if it was 300 there as it was, right? And as opposed to it being 3,000.
Right.
As long as the 300 got their torch lit. It's not about passing the baton. I say that all the time.
You do say that. I love
It's
that
not about,
too.
because passing the baton is a track thing. So that means I pass you the baton and I get off the field.
You're right.
No, we got to stay on the field. So it's better to light torches. So I'm hoping that as we recalled what happened at that march, and we talked about the issues of the present, that it encourages us, young, old, black, white, Jew, because it takes all of us. We need allies, right? A rainbow. So I think it's important. So I think that we did that. Even the people that was on the side in the band at the Warrensville band, you know, they were not at the stage, but they participated in the march. And I hope for them, just being there, that it piqued the interest in them, and that somebody in that band, there was a young girl, young kids, there was a young girl that read her poem. Somebody's life, every time we do it, every time you do this podcast, right, somebody's life is going to be transformed forever.
That's
and
correct.
they're going to continue this work.
That's right.
So let's move on, because I want to get into the vessel. And that's moving us closer to how you're doing the work that you're doing now, and some of the work that you got going now with the Clergy Coalition. Talk to me, pastors, about what you're doing with this vessel program and how you continuing to encourage people to vote and activism.
The Vessel's Vote is a vehicle to inspire and engage both clergy as well as the church to be actively involved in voting, actively involved in the public arena. And so one of the things we have to dispel is that this work is politics. This isn't politics. This is the work of the Lord, right? Amen. And so what we attempt to do is to train captains and train action teams in churches. And not just, as Philip said earlier, not just every time campaign season comes. So then we have to start over again. But what we do this all year, just updating, registering people to vote, dealing with people getting pulled off the rolls, helping to educate, getting people to be involved in what we call micro-organizing. So it's not just voting, but it's also inspiring the church to be able to know how to get a stoplight at the corner of their church, right? Helping people understand how to engage in change, right? So I just think it's very important, as we know that post-voting in Cuyahoga County has just gone down, especially among African-American males between the ages of 18 and 35. Essentially, we just don't vote. And so what we're trying to do, starting with the black church, and the black church not on Sunday morning, because most of the people on Sunday morning vote. But it's through the church's outreach programs, their feeding programs, their food pantries, where people from the community come. And it's there that we register people to vote, talk to them about voting, and really encouraging them. One of the things that we learned and was really pointed out in this August election is that our success and our strength is through early voting. Is through vote by mail. And so what we have done, and working with Pastor Phillips, who is really the chief architect for Souls to the Polls in Cleveland, is that Souls to the Polls is just not a Sunday thing. It's just not the Sunday before election. But Souls to the Polls is that entire period that involves phone calling, rides to the polls, training people on how to request a ballot, making sure that they turn them in. The other thing that's important about that is that when I help you request a ballot and I turn that in, I can make a copy of that. And then I can follow up with you So now I'm building a database. So I'm calling Miss Jackson. Has it come? Miss Jackson, can I come by and pick it up? Can we drop off a stamp to you, right? So all of this is souls to the polls. So the whole goal is to get more souls to the polls.
I'm going to ask both of you guys a question. Let's start with you, Pastor. Why is it you feel it's necessary that the church takes this role? Is the church role to actually do all of that, but is it the role of the church to really focus on souls and the moral compass? We're talking about voting. We're talking about getting people active. We're talking about, is that a spiritual thing?
My first thing,
I know why you're going to say why it's important. I get the importance, but I'm just like, should it be the thing?
Yeah, I'm wondering, are you really giving me this strike right down my strike zone? Because I would love to hit this ball. So thank you so much for that question. It's funny, because I have these conversations all the time here and across the country about what is the role of the church. And the church, the black church, is very different than the white church. And so when we talk about the role of the black church, that's a specific thing. And the black church has always been the center of our community. And even when we were on the plantation, we had a church. And remember when we were doing the Underground Railroad, that started with the pastor of the church, and they would hide folks in the church. So that's always our vehicle for freedom and liberty for the black community has always went through the church. And the reason for that is because that is the only institution that black folks always run and owned. We didn't own anything else, didn't have any other business. Our first thing that we had, that we ran, that we were in charge of, was the church. We have more institutions today, but every civil rights organization, Bishop Minor would tell you, came through the church. We're talking about SCLC, or NAACP, Urban, all those things came out of the church. So we are carrying on a tradition that has been established way before us. And I tell people, I wish I was smart enough to think of this already. No, I'm doing things that I've been geared for doing all of my life, because this is the nature of the black preacher and the black church.
I agree 100%. First thing I'm gonna say something very controversial, okay? Is that, not every church in the black community is a black church. There are some churches and some church buildings who have black folk going to them, right?
Ooh, I like
now,
that.
the historical black church was born out of freedom, justice, and equality. It was born out of a rebellion of the white church, right?
And that's where I was thinking.
Okay, and so when you think about the heritage of the African American church tradition, it has always been involved in the comprehensive person, right? Always involved in the community. From the 60s and 40s, the 30s, historically, it's about its read of theology. It has its own praxis, its own history, its own way of doing church business. That is the history of the black church. Once again, there are some churches that have black people going to them. But when you study historically the cultural history of the black church, it is about empowering our people, and voting and public policy has been the means for government and others to oppress us. And so we cannot avoid public policy and voting.
So my next question to you will be then, do you believe that the church are being affected by that? Meaning that in our community, activism is now at an all-time low in some cases. Don't have as many people being active as back in the days when we were talking about. And we also know that the churches itself, as membership is relating, it has gone down, and people are not going to church as much as they used to, and that kind of thing. So all the stuff we're talking about, how do you think society is playing a role in that, in doing that? Meaning that maybe the church isn't active enough in the community to get more people to come to the church. Maybe, like you say, you have all these churches, but you don't have black folks in the churches, or so to speak. Maybe it's because of the type of outreach that they're doing, or the lack of outreach that's going on in our community.
I'm gonna go first. Okay, so I would say this: there's a tremendous shift going on in the country in all sectors.
Yes,
not just the church, because of COVID.
Okay,
right?
that's right.
Now, in my view, authentic black churches were prepared for COVID because they were already in the community. They had programs. So we're in an era now, even then, was that churches became irrelevant in the midst of COVID if all you had was a Sunday morning service,
That's
right?
correct.
Because people were not coming into the building. But there's a host of churches all around who are already feeding the hungry, going out, knocking on doors, doing the jobs program like Phillips have. And so I think that we're prepared for the shift. Right?
Okay.
And the ability to now have virtual church, right? One of the things about the historical black church, it has always been what I call agile and adaptive because it was always under assault. And because it was always under assault, it had to adjust to trying times. So I think the authentic black church, if it's Pastor Cobb, if it's Matthews, if it's Pastor Harris, Pastor Phillips, all of them were already in the community and doing things in the community. Now, all these churches play a role, right? Now, and I am as gospel and soul concerned as anybody else. But when you talk about the historical tradition of the black church, it has always had its roots in the community. And so these are some trying times, and I think that we have to know.
You feel the churches are rooted in the community with the way the communities are today, and the community, especially in the city of Cleveland, is off the chain. And so do you really feel that the churches today are really rooted into the community in the way they used to be?
I would say that we need to go deeper in our roots. We have to not abandon community. We not abandon the suffering.
That's
right.
correct.
And I think that there are adjustments. We've been meeting with pastors for all month about talking to each other, learning from each other, of how we can do more in the community. We have to connect with our young black boys, not trying to convert them,
That's
but to
correct.
hear from them. This is a season for the black church to not preach, but to listen and learn.
I hear, but I think.
Are we doing that? I think we need to do more of it. Of
Yeah,
course not.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you, and it's just me. And people do a lot. We need to bring them in and listen. But when you listen to them, they tell you they looking for direction. So I think part of it is a little both. I think we do agree, but I think we got to be able to extend, to be able to communicate with them, then to be able to offer them something that they're looking for.
Well, let me close with this. I think that what you're saying is so right. That we are fighting, Bishop Tony Miner and I are fighting every day to make sure that the black church stays relevant and stays engaged. And what we have to make sure we're doing is being about our Father's business, which includes outreach in the community, but also includes giving real spiritual direction in these critical times in which we're living
There
in.
you go.
I've always been pushing economic justice, and we need to be about getting money and jobs to people. But even after connecting that young person to a job, what keeps them with that job is our mentoring spirituality part of them. Because if they don't have that, there's still a problem. So there is a hunger and a thirst for righteousness, and I think the church, the authentic church, is providing that, and they're looking for that.
Yeah, I think it's the smaller church thing. To be honest with you, I think that the smaller churches right now has a great opportunity to get in there and get with them, because smaller churches is where the people feel they can get help. Bigger churches, you go there, you get lost in. So you want to go to a place where I can
That's
go
good
there
perspective.
when the pastor see me come in, he knows that's me. I want to feel as if I come here on Sunday, I miss it, that somebody's there. So when you talking to people who are looking for help,
Yes.
they want to know that there's people out there helping and people watching. When you go to mega churches, you get lost. You dare, you get in there.
like going to a concert.
It's like going
Yes,
to, and there's so many people there, and now you're trying to keep up because you're not dressed. It's a lot. When you go to a smaller church, you get it. And I know we're on the thing. One more questions for you, and we'll let you get up out of here.
Okay.
All right. If you could trade places with a person for one day, who would it be, and why?
I think it would be Al Sharpton.
Really?
Yeah.
Al Sharpton. One day in Al Sharpton's shoes.
Let me tell you why. Because I watched Jesse Jackson when he ran for president and had the Rainbow Coalition, and he had the attention of the nation, right? But failed to really do deep community organizing to plant the work. I saw Obama, when he ran for office, he started a group, and he had the attention of the country, but then he became president and was focusing on the country. I think Al Sharpton has the attention and he has the platform, but I don't know if he has the support around him to have an operational structure. And so with his posture right now, I think it's a great opportunity for us to go deep into communities to do this concept called micro community organizing. And so it is where I think the thing that we miss in this era that King had was that he had the Hosea Williams and the James Bevels and the a whole host of people who went into these communities organizing. And so it's not so much that I am enthralled by Al Sharpton, but it's the opportunity that is there. And so if I could trade places in having the opportunity to really spur that kind of deep community organizing all around the country, it would just be tremendous.
Interesting. What's your guilty pleasure?
What's my guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure.
Oh, gosh. I would say it's Chinese food.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You love some Chinese food.
Yeah. And I need to eat less of it, and I do eat
Where you like to
less
go?
of it.
Where's your spot?
It's real interesting because I like greasy spoons, right?
Oh, so you like the Chinese spot?
Yeah.
Oh, you went there.
Yeah, you went there. And,
Okay.
and because I like shrimp fried rice.
Okay.
And I found some really good shrimp fried rice because you can see it.
Right.
See, with the shrimp fried rice, you can see, I'm not talking about refried rice, but you can actually see them taking the fried rice, taking the shrimp. It ain't like the chicken, so I ain't got to worry about whether or not it's cat
Right.
or beef. And that's that.
What's the best compliment you ever got?
I think the best compliment I got, it was a host of people, but one was from Reverend Albert Love. I saw him in Washington at a conference. Hadn't seen him for years. He was on the staff. He's gotten older. He was on the staff of an activist in the city in Georgia. And he said, Tony Miner, I've been watching you. He said, we've been watching you all on Facebook. He said, you've been faithful. You've been faithful to the cause. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I think that kind of really touched me. So when I see people around the country, from classmates I went to Morehouse with, people in graduate school or whatever, and then when I hear them say, even some people in Collinwood, I didn't really know how much of an activist I was at Collinwood, but I run into people I went to Collinwood, and they say, Tony, I'm not surprised what you're doing, man. You've been doing what you've been doing for the last 40 years. So I think it's that compliment of really speaking to my sticking to the plow.
Excellent. There's something you wish you was better at.
I wish I was better at maybe self-promotion.
Okay.
Self-promotion, right? And let me explain that. I run into people all the time. People come to my church, or people, they hear me speak about the history, different things I'm doing. I'm just now writing my first book that's going to come out in the next month, and getting some good people to endorse it. So I think of opening that business, starting that consulting firm, of putting more so my skills in the public arena and not just my persona.
What's the worst advice you ever got? What's the worst advice anyone ever gave you?
I think these are really tough questions. All right. I can tell you the best. Can I switch it? I can tell you the best
Okay.
advice.
Tell me the best advice you got.
Best advice.
Okay.
All right. I was a student at Morehouse, and my older brother got into some trouble, right? And so I had, coming back to Cleveland, I had volunteered with NAACP, so I got to know Sarah Harper, right? And so my brother got into some trouble publicly, so I called her, right, to ask for some advice about a good lawyer, and she was aware of the case, etc., right? And the best advice she told me to do, she said, the best thing you can do for your brother is to stay in school and focus on your academics. Because I had thought about coming back home. And so that, for me, and Sarah Harper and I stayed friends over the years, and we had those special moments. And I think that was a very pivotal moment for me, because if I had left school and came back home, it's no telling what would have happened.
Here's the last one for you. What never fails to make you smile?
What never fails to make me smile? I would say in this part of my life is seeing my wife succeed. I think Natoya has overcome a lot of adversity. She's had high public jobs, right? a lot of challenges, right? Continues to make me smile. Seeing my sons, right, are successful. Right, one son finished Morehouse, went to Georgetown, works for the Shirley Chisholm Foundation. My other son played basketball here in Cleveland at Heights and at Orange, and then traded in the basketball for the camera. And so now he's a junior at Morehouse and one of the top bloggers, doing a really good job. Just came from visiting some film schools in New York. So I think what makes me smile is seeing people around me succeed and achieve their goals.
Excellent. Well,
I got a question.
Oh, you got a question? Go ahead, Latif.
Dr. Minor, if you could go back in the time and give some advice to Dr. King, what would you say?
Oh, I would say to not worry so much about what others thought about him. And I've worked with a number of people who worked directly with Dr. King, and he was one that was very affected by those that criticized him, right? And so in fact, that when he died and they did an autopsy, they said that his heart and his body parts was of someone that was 80, 90 years old. Dr. King was a chain smoker, right? And toward the end of his career, he had a whole lot of challenges, and a lot of his following had begun to wane, but his vision was to help poor people and continue the work that he had. And so I think that would be the one thing, as so many people did. And they, there's a story that right before he went back to Memphis, it was his birthday, and one of the great moments that made him smile was that the staff had planned a surprise birthday party for him. So there are pictures, video of that occasion, because he wasn't one that wanted all of the attention on him. And so from what I understand from that event, that was one that brought him a bunch of joy. And we don't know, obviously he got killed, so we don't really know what type of long-term effect that it had. But I think that it would have been good for him to know that the masses of black people really appreciated all that he was doing for us.
That's awesome. That's it, Latif?
Yeah, he knocked that one out the park for me.
Okay, excellent.
All right,
brother. We appreciate you coming on the show, Reverend. I want to, again, thank you for coming out to our program, man. You did an awesome job, educated us on some really good facts that we didn't know. James Orange.
Yes, sir.
Is his name. And if you don't know who James Orange is, people, you should look him up. James Orange. So, Pastor, what I will do, and we do with all our programs, we give you an opportunity to close the program. This camera right here belongs to you, man. You can look into this camera, say whatever's on your heart. Let people know exactly how they can reach you, how they can reach the church, how they can get in touch with that, and anything you got going. This camera belongs to you, sir, so go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. I just want to speak to somebody here today that I do a lot in the area of healing, trauma and grief, right? We not only encourage people to get involved in the community, but it's important that we take care of ourselves. And so if you're interested in some trauma training or some grief training, please call me at the church at 216-883-5036. If you're interested in becoming an activist, interested in becoming an advocate, if you're interested in voting rights, if you're interested in having your church involved, join us with Vessels Vote. Once again, you can call me at 216-883-5032, 883-5036, 883-5036. So please just know that the best is yet to come.
All right, that's Reverend Minor. We will have all of the links in our description of how you can reach him by email, and any other links to his website and all that information will be in the description. And so, Phillips, I want you to close us up out of this program here, sir. And
I just want to thank everyone for continuing to listen to the Cleveland Clergy Coalition podcast, a part of what Brother Kenn Dowell is doing. I love this format, and it's time for us to continue to come together as a community, not just the spiritual community, but the business community, the activist community. And I really appreciate your forum, and what we're doing with Amen is very important in these critical times, that we have strength in unity, and having unity doesn't mean that you are absorbed into becoming something that group is. We can have our own individuality. You can reach the Cleveland Clergy Coalition. We can go to our website, clevelandclergycoalition.com, or if you're looking for a job, you can always give us a call at 216-338-1771. Give us a call. We always have job training and readiness every Wednesday at our church, Morehouse Baptist Church, 113 18 Miles Avenue. And if none of that works, you can call me, 216-889-7844. Thank you, Brother Kenn Dowell. Appreciate you.
We will see you next week. Peace.